Hi everyone, it's Katie, and today I have another installment, I'm not sure what to call it, of Therapeutic Tarot, my little series that I've been doing every now and then on how I use tarot to help improve and maintain my mental health. Now, if you haven't watched my introductory video to this series, I'll leave a link to it because I think it's really important that you do that before watching this one. And in this video, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how I am using tarot at the moment with my psychologist. I've kind of hinted at it here and there throughout my videos. I spoke about it originally in one of my vlogs from Vlogmas in December. And what I've been doing with my psychologist is working on my personal strengths. I've been doing a lot of pretty intense stuff with my psychologist. So as a side element to our work together, I've been exploring and learning more about my personal strengths in hopes of increasing my confidence. And I've absolutely loved doing this, and almost straight away I brought tarot into the equation. So there's been several different steps in this process, but step one is establishing your strengths. You can do this either by, just what you know yourself to be really good at, what you know to be your strengths. What I did was I completed a survey. It was quite an extensive survey. If I can find it, I'll leave a link to the one that I used down in the description bar. If not, there's so many different types of surveys and quizzes that you can do that will spit out a few different strengths that you have. So that's a good place to start if you're struggling to establish what your strengths are. But that's where we start. We work out what some of our strengths are. Aim for 5 to 10, I think, is a good list to start with. Step 2 is associating each of those strengths with a tarot card. Now, this doesn't have to be based on the meaning of the card, the traditional meaning. It can be, if you find that easy. It can just be on the imagery. Whatever works. Just establish a connection between a strength that you have and a tarot card. My number one strength was appreciation of beauty and excellence, and I used the Nine of Pentacles to associate with that card. To me, she just looks like she's relishing in her beautiful, wonderful surroundings. It's almost got an element of indulgence to it, but in a really positive way. That word can have some pretty negative connotations, but just indulging and being mindful in the beauty and the experience of her moment. My second strength was a love of learning, and for me this was the Eight of Pentacles, because learning for me, it has a lot to do with book study, but it's going off on my own and working something out on my own, studying and learning and practicing over time until I feel confident in my ability. Learning is a process and a journey, and I think the Eight of Pentacles really displays that well for me. Another one of mine that came up was curiosity, interest, novelty, and openness, and I thought, who better to depict that than the Fool? And this isn't necessarily which card best fits that meaning. It's more about how you express or how you see that strength in you, if that makes sense. So perhaps, for example, there is a better card to display a love of learning, but for me, how I learn and how I love to learn, I think is best depicted by the Eight of Pentacles. Step 3 is identifying when you are using your strengths. And this is where I start to find working with the tarot really helpful, because I think so often we feel like we don't have any strengths. That was the case for me, and that's certainly the case for a lot of people who have very low self-confidence. So if you're in that basket, you might think that you don't have any strengths, or that you don't have very many strengths. But once you kind of start to put a list together, and then actively start to notice when you are using your strengths, you'll start to really notice that you use them a whole lot more than you think you do. And perhaps it's because they come so naturally to you that you don't notice them anymore. Or perhaps, like me, with number 1, appreciation of beauty and excellence, I didn't see that as a strength. If anything, I thought that was something annoying about me. So that's where bringing the tarot in can be really helpful. So now when I stop dead in the street and ooh and ah at a pretty tree, I used to think that that was annoying and silly and childish. Now I think of it as being the Nine of Pentacles, and I've always loved the woman in the Nine of Pentacles. I think she's amazing. She's her own woman, and she is so relishing her experience. And so now, rather than that immediate thought of, oh, I'm being so childish, it's, no, I'm not, I am being the Nine of Pentacles. So I think this is a great way of getting to know your strengths, and then to start recognizing and appreciating when you are using those strengths. I found it really helpful to, at the end of the day, jot down when I've used those strengths, because that has helped me become more and more mindful and aware of when I am using them. And it's also made me kind of switch on more quickly. And then you also have a lovely, nice little list at the end of the week or month of all those times that you were actively using your strengths. So maybe just just sit with this exercise for a week or two of just recognizing when you are using your strengths and using the tarot to help you recognize when you are using those strengths. Step number 4 is actively seeking new ways of using your strengths. And again, I found the tarot very helpful in doing this. There are lots of different ways to start brainstorming these ideas. For one example, I looked at the Nine of Pentacles and thought about my strength of appreciating beauty and excellence. And I'm very good at doing that in a natural environment, just as she is. I think that's why I associated very strongly this strength with this card. But what I started asking myself is, what else would this woman, who obviously just appreciates beauty and excellence around her so strongly, what else would she like to do? What else would this strength of mine like to do? How else can I exercise this strength of mine? So I started to think about how the Nine of Pentacles might appreciate beauty and excellence in different ways, in ways that perhaps I'm not doing yet. So that might be in makeup or food or in culture or in architecture, in film, in music. There's so many different ways to use this strength of mine, and kind of having a dialogue with her and asking her how she likes to create this feeling in a range of different environments was helpful for me, starting to brainstorm these different ways that I could use my own strength. Another example in this card more clearly was the bird. So one of my new goals for using my strength was to go bird watching. So there's lots of different ways that you can use the cards to start to brainstorm different ways of using your strengths. You can use just the idea of the card, the meaning of the card. You can kind of ask the person in the card to give you ideas. You can take imagery, for example, the bird, straight out of the card for ideas. Moving on from just using the cards that you've selected intentionally, you can also just draw cards at random to kind of get some more inspiration, some more ideas of how to use these strengths. So for example, my strength of love of learning, I could ask the deck for some ideas. And I have the Five of Wands. And I guess the first thought from this card was just to pay more attention to how I learn from others and how I interact with others. And to remember that, when we get caught in our own beliefs and understandings and think that we're right, we close ourselves off to learning new things. So to remember that each and every person has something for me to learn from, and then that requires openness, that requires acceptance, that requires a willingness to compromise and to listen. So it's a really quick, simple example, and I'm sure I could get a whole lot more out of this card if I spent time, but those are some ways that you can start to use your strengths more and more and more in your everyday life. So this isn't really a complicated exercise, but it is certainly one that you can take anywhere and everywhere, and certainly one that I've used more and more and developed on over quite a long period of time. So this isn't a spread that I'd sit down with. This is something that I have brought into my everyday life. I think working with our strengths is so important, especially if we have low self-confidence, if we're not feeling great about ourselves. Starting with recognizing and acknowledging our strengths, and then recognizing when we're using our strengths, and then actively seeking new ways to use our strengths can be such a great way of building that confidence and also getting to know ourselves better and to try new things. Those both are always wonderful things, as well as the confidence boost. And for me, working with the tarot in conjunction has been a really great way of doing this. It's become a lot more tangible for me, where once I'd really struggled to recognize my love of learning as a strength. I used to think it was just me wasting time reading all these books. Now, instead, I see it as the Eight of Pentacles, someone who's working hard, someone who's really developing themselves and really growing. Because I've attached it to that card, and because I've already got all these wonderful associations with that card, not only do I recognize when I'm using that strength much more easily, because there's a representation I already acknowledge, it's also easier for me to acknowledge all of the positives within that strength rather than kind of explain it away. Of course, you can use absolutely any deck for this type of work. I have found myself mostly using the Rider-Waite-Smith for this. I think primarily because it's not a spread that I just do. It's not just the cards that I'm working with. It's me being out and about and noticing, oh, I'm being the Nine of Pentacles right now. And so when I think of the Nine of Pentacles, the Rider-Waite-Smith is what comes to mind. So it's just been easier for me to make those associations more quickly if I'm working with the Rider-Waite-Smith. But That does not mean that you have to use the Rider-Waite Smith. Of course, you could use any deck. You could even use Oracle decks. It doesn't matter. Basically, the whole point is to just get you working with and acknowledging and understanding your personal strengths better and interacting with them and testing their limits and trying them in new ways. Just experiencing and working with your strengths. That's the purpose of these exercises. So it's all very simple, but it is quite a lot of fun. I've found a lot of enjoyment in exploring my personal strengths in this way with tarot, and it certainly has started to make me feel a little bit better about the strengths that I have. So I hope you found this video interesting or helpful. If you have any comments or questions, as always, leave those below and I'll do my best to get back to you. And until next time, guys, much love. Bye.